some people are banned from being able to show their faces on YouTube. And EDP445 was supposed to be one of these people. Something strange has happened. EDP445 is back in the spotlight. And it isn't just that people are talking about him. There is actually a new documentary about his story, which raises a question that might sound ridiculous at first. Are we watching the birth of the next Chris Chan? Because if EDP is actually headed down that path, his return could be much bigger than just another controversy.
Why do you think you wanted to have to a 13-year-old?
I mean, the reason why I wanted to have with a 13-year-old is already fucking clear.
EDP, he wasn't really part of mainstream media anymore. His name still existed and the memes were still there. The old videos were still getting reposted. But the person behind them has almost become a relic for an older version of YouTube. Mike Klum comes out with a statement. He's making an entire documentary about EDP. Now he promised that he wasn't gonna make another 2-hour compilation of old EDP clips because EDP himself was being involved in this documentary. A trailer gets dropped and immediately people were losing their minds over it. Not just because of EDP, it was because the documentary looked insanely cinematic. The trailer passed 1 million views and people were joking about the way EDP was getting introduced because they felt like he was getting introduced like a Marvel villain. EDP445 was trending, but that was only the beginning, because when the full documentary actually came out on August 9th, I realized that we didn't just get an old EDP story again. We got EDP's life after the fall. But hold on a second. Wasn't this documentary just meant to remind us of how bad of a person EDP was? Well, here's where it gets interesting. The documentary doesn't treat EDP like an old YouTuber. It treats him like a person who has been living an entirely new life after his career collapsed. We're seeing where he is now. We're hearing him talk about what happened. We're getting his perspective on his life after YouTube. And that creates something that EDP hasn't had for years. A new storyline. That's important because normally when an internet personality gets destroyed in a scandal, that's the end of it. The creator disappears and eventually nobody has something to say. EDP is such an absurdist that he kept pushing on for no real reason at all. He has managed to create something different. New statements, reactions, and something for people to argue about. And one moment in particular became one of the most talked about moments in the whole documentary. EDP talking about how he believes that God saved him. That statement alone reignited the conversation about if EDP actually understands the seriousness or whether he simply created his own new explanation of the whole thing. To strengthen this claim a bit more, I just want to highlight that he said fuck all that when being confronted about the accusation. And the documentary does something that makes this whole story even more bizarre. Because buried inside of that documentary about EDP is Chris Chan. The internet personality whose life has been documented for years online appears in the EDP documentary and gives his 2 cents on the matter. And honestly, the irony is almost too perfect. Because before the making of this documentary, you could make the argument that what I'm saying is absurd. Now, they're literally appearing in the same documentary. But the cameo matters for a reason beyond how insane it was. Chris Chan is basically the example of what happens when a normal content creator goes from being that to being a never-ending story. Her life became so heavily documented that eventually the fanbase wasn't just waiting for another upload anymore, they were waiting for the next event. And that's the phenomenon we're actually asking whether EDP is entering. Because EDP doesn't need to be Chris Chan. He doesn't need to have the same life. He doesn't even need to become more infamous. The question is much simpler than that. Can EDP turn his downfall to an endless second act? I mean, right now it looks possible. Hear me out for a second. EDP disappears from mainstream internet culture. Years go by and people assume his story has ended. Then someone makes a documentary. The trailer goes viral. The documentary releases. And EDP starts talking again. People start analyzing everything he says. It's going in circles. And this is what separates someone who has been permanently cancelled from someone who is a permanent internet character now. Scandals usually have an expiration date. Eventually, there is nothing left to discuss. But if the person keeps producing new material, then of course the audience has new stuff to talk about. And that is what made Chris Chan such an unusual case. The original controversy wasn't what kept the saga alive, but the endless supply of new chapters. And EDP has just created one of his biggest chapters since his downfall. A full documentary for an unknown reason. Well, it's very known if you understand what I'm trying to say here. Chris Chan herself appeared in the documentary. That's a ridiculously big amount of material for someone who was supposed to be finished years ago. But here is where we have to be careful. Calling EDP the next Chris Chan right now would be jumping the gun. Chris Chan's saga developed for years and became an almost unprecedented level of documentation. EDP has only just now entered this new chapter. But that is exactly why this moment is interesting, because we're seeing the beginning of something rather than the finished product. Because if this documentary is just a one-time event, then this is simply another EDP comeback. People watch the documentary, they talk about it for some weeks, and then eventually nobody has anything else to say about it. And I look stupid for making this video and having these claims. But if EDP keeps appearing and keeps creating controversy, keeps giving people new material, and keeps turning his life into content, this documentary might look less like a comeback and more like what I have presented for you today. Before I go, I just want to rant about a thing. Every time I record these videos, there is something wrong. So I have to re-record them like 5 times. But there is always something with the audio, or like the video didn't record and the audio is late and there is some drift, and I don't know. So just so you guys know, I re-record my videos like 3 times. I just wanted to tell you that. I know nobody gives a shit. Anyways, if you liked this one and enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe and leave a like, and give me feedback if you think this new style of content is gooder than the before. Alright, see ya.